All right. So thank you all for joining our 11 o'clock session. From those who were in the first session, welcome back. To those of you who weren't able to join us, welcome. We're very excited to have you to our virtual Future Women's Leadership Forum. As some of you may know, this event is typically done in both the fall and the spring. We usually have our female high school students with us. Unfortunately, with the students being out of school, we are unable to make that work right now, but we are happy to provide this professional development opportunity and personal development opportunity for you today. So in this session, we have Crystal Everett. She is joining us from the Kansas City, Missouri School District. She is their real world learning coordinator. So I am going to kick it over to her and she can tell you a little bit more about her position, and then we will get into her partners and purpose presentation for today.
Awesome. Well, good morning, everybody. I know we're all just kind of adjusting, kind of settling into our quarantine, stay at home, shelter at home life. But as Jenny said, Crystal Everett, my full-time role is as the real world learning coordinator for Kansas City Public Schools. And what that means in a nutshell is that my role is to really take on this real world learning initiative. And so when we think about how do we make the high school experience more valuable for students, okay, it's something went crazy with my screen, but I'm back now. And so when we think about how we make the high school experience more valuable for students, that means making sure they have access to dual credit, dual enrollment opportunities, making sure that they have internship and client project experiences, having access to entrepreneur experiences, and also industry recognized credentials. So I would say pre-COVID, I was doing a lot of connecting and engaging and figuring out what that actually looks like for our school district. And then now, kind of in the midst of this pandemic and COVID, I think we really have to take a look at our education structure and really just look at how we are maximizing those opportunities for students, recognizing that some things are done virtually. I think this is definitely kind of magnified our equity issues. And so again, like I said, I get a chance to help cultivate those opportunities for students. And so how I even got connected with this particular session and with the Future Women's Leadership Forum, I actually had the chance to serve as a mentor a couple years ago. And of course, it was in person with students. And I like to think that it was, I know there were like 3 mentors to 1 student on that particular day, and just kind of being on the other side and recognizing, you know, issues with students who say they want to attend and who don't end up showing up. But we, you know, had a very great response from the adults. And so just kind of being able to see what that experience was like. And so I thought that this particular topic might be relevant to that experience. And of course, we don't have our students here with us today, but I think some of this information is still something to think about as we press forward and look at those relationships with students. So I will go ahead and get started here. Let's see. And then I can do that.
Crystal, are you able to share your screen?
Yeah, I think it's going now. Let's see. Is it showing up?
Wonderful. Yes, there it is.
Perfect. Like I said, just wanted to start with kind of a check-in. Like I said, I know we're all kind of maybe settling in more than still in the adjustment phase, but go backwards. Nope. Oh, Prezi. Okay, hold on just a second. Let me stop sharing for just a second. Okay, I think we have it together. Thanks for bearing with me there. So just kind of before we hit the road, so again, when we think about kind of navigating these relationships with mentors and mentees, just kind of using this analogy of it's a process, it's a journey. So like I said, before we hit the road and kind of travel down this brief presentation, just kind of, you can sound off in the chat box, how do you feel today? What are maybe some challenges you're facing? But then on the bright side, what's something that's bringing you some excitement? I can definitely start with the challenge of navigating working at home with a 2-year-old, and maybe some of you all are having some similar experiences and shifting to working from home, and also still trying to make sure there's some sort of education going on with your children. So let me see if I can pull up the chat box to see some of your responses. Feeling energized. The warm weather definitely helps. I just was blowing bubbles on the balcony with my daughter, so it's awesome. Feeling good. Hey, Cynthia. um, Stress trying to juggle kids and work. That's real. Hopefully there's some wine at the end of the day for you, Emily, if that's your thing. Feeling like there's finally a routine. I would agree. Tired, stress, that's real. I think we also just kind of have to acknowledge some of those challenges. It's not all rosy, and with our color coded Excel spreadsheets, that's not everybody's thing there. So thank you for sharing. Feeling optimistic. Thank you, Chelsea. Enjoying weather, seeing other faces. I would agree. What will the new normal look like? I keep kind of hearing that phrase and trying to figure out how I personally feel about it, but I don't think it's just kind of this automatic turn right and we get to go back to having our work routines and happy hours and family barbecues. So awesome. Finding things to celebrate. Congratulations to your daughter, college basketball. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for participating in that. Cautiously optimistic, but enjoying extra time with family. Nice. Made a fort under your desk. Wonderful, Cynthia. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I can exit out of the chat box there. And so I wanted to at least start with my mentor and mentee story. And so these are some pictures. So on one side, that's me with one of my mentors, Dr. Wanda Everett. And when I was a student at Drake University, that's where I graduated with my undergrad degree from. She was serving as the vice provost for student affairs and academic excellence. And I first met her when I was going to orientation. And even as I was kind of preparing and practicing and, thought about that memory, I thought about, again, how that experience might be shifted for a lot of students who were planning on, moving away, going to college this fall. And so hopefully there's some ways that they can still kind of build that connectivity when they think about kind of that next phase in post-secondary. But when I think about my experience with Wanda, even though I started college 14 years ago, she's still a person that I, consider a mentor, and I'm able to call on her. I think we've gotten to the point in our relationship where if, I have been looking for a job, within past years, it's not that I have to tell her every time that I'm going to use her as a reference. It's more of like, hey, you should be getting this, just a heads up. And don't necessarily even have to ask anymore, and just being able to think about our relationship in terms of like she's attending my baby shower and those sort of things. And so this relationship again is 14 years, continues to grow and change. And even though I haven't been a college student for 10 years now, that relationship is still there. And then on the other side is me with my daughter and then one of my mentees. And so I used to work as program director for 2020 leadership, and Alexis was a student in that program, and we met when she was a senior. And we had taken the students down to University of Central Missouri for a trip, and just let students know that I'm available if you want to work on scholarships, or, you know, you want to work on your college admissions process, you know, I'm there and available. And I think that trip was on a Saturday. And so we set up a time for the next week. And so this was before marriage, motherhood. So my time was a little bit more free there. But we set a time. I met her at her school. We began to just chop away at, you know, working on essays. Even though she graduated from Wyandotte High School in 2016, it's 2020, and she's working on applying to nursing school, but still there. I think picture was about a year ago. We had a chance to meet up for breakfast at Denny's. And so just, again, being able to call on each other, or she's able to call on me, I'm able to reach out to her as needed, but she still knows that I'm there as a support system. And I would say her essays have gotten better over time, just because we've just been able to practice. She's been able to get a lot of feedback. And so really just kind of these cultivation of relationships. And when I think about mentors and mentees, you know, sometimes it's not always this person that you're talking to every day, but you know that there's just that comfort, you know, that there's this person that, you know, you can always reach out to. So as we buckle in for the journey, when I think about, again, those mentor-mentee relationships, it's really just, when you think about building that relationship and kind of considering the reasons why mentorship matters to you. For me, I always think about being able to invest in other people as many people have invested in me. And so when I think about my relationship with Wanda, she was very invested into my tenure as a Drake student. Even, you know, once I graduated, I remember distinctively being in her office to talk about something related to a student organization. And she had already pulled up my grades and was like, okay, we've been able to talk about this, but tell me about these grades right here. And of course, the waterworks began. And so that was a pretty transformative moment when I think about how she was able to be supportive, but also able to hold me accountable. And so I think about how that translates into my relationship with students like Alexis and other students that I've had the opportunity to work with. So again, feel free to kind of type in some of those reasons why mentorship matters to you. Maybe it was you had some really great mentors and you want to share that, or you thought you were in some great mentor-mentee relationships and they didn't work out so well. So definitely want to hear your responses there. And so if you think about having a mentor, you know, what do you enjoy about the relationship? Is it just, again, you have someone who is a sounding board where you are able to meet kind of in the context of career opportunities, but it's kind of thinking about what you enjoy about the relationship. And I think that kind of helps guide the reasons why you're interested in becoming a mentor. And another important point that I have here is thinking about the different ways that you will meet prospective mentees. Of course, this particular event was initially built as an opportunity to meet prospective mentees and be able to engage with future leaders. And maybe, I won't even say future leaders, but we know that a lot of the young ladies who attend are already taking on different leadership roles in their schools, maybe within their families as well. And so just kind of thinking about those ways that you meet prospective mentees. Those are, I would say, are more in the formal space. When I think about also have the opportunity to serve as a mentor with the Kansas City Public Schools mentoring program. And so that's a very intentional program. There's a full process of applying, being vetted, having a background check. There's a set time. So if you decide that you as the adult want to, again, have that mentor-mentee relationship with the student, you can choose to work with an elementary student and participate in what we call the Lunch Buddies program. So for example, I go to Longfellow Elementary. It's about 5 minutes from the school building that I work in, and I'm able to have lunch with my mentee, well, again, pre-COVID, once a week. And so really just a chance to play games. I think one of the last few times we were able to meet in person, we were doing some multiplication and division, just because she said that that was something that she wanted to keep practicing on. So those are some very formal processes. I also think about big brothers, big sisters, and I had the chance to also be a little sister as well as a big sister. And as a big, I can say that I definitely appreciate the long process that it takes to serve in that role, just because this is a person who is very integrated with a child and their family as well. And so anyone who has such access to children, you want to make sure that they've had the chance to fully be vetted through through a process. And if there's any other ways that you think of, how you get a chance to meet students and become a prospective mentor, feel free to talk about it in the chat box. And then, of course, I think there's just some opportunities when we think about our professional roles and how if someone says, hey, my daughter or my son is interested in this kind of role, would you be willing to talk to them? I think those are sometimes the way that mentor-mentee relationships are formed. And I do believe that even in those very formal processes such as our KCPS program, as well as Big Brothers Big Sisters, you'll find some great relationships. I also think there's some value in some very organic relationships that are formed, and sometimes those are a little bit easier once we've maybe finished college or have grown to a certain age. And I recognize it is a little bit harder sometimes with high school students, even middle school students, but those organic relationships, I think, are the ones sometimes that we really think about that are long lasting. And finally here, just simply being there, I think is an important part of building that relationship. I will say from personal experience, when I think about my relationship with Alexis before, so we'll say maybe 2016, early 2017, if she texts me, she might get an immediate response. Now with life and navigating all these different roles, it might take me a couple of days to actually be able to sit down and read an essay or respond to a message there from her. So another part is just really navigating the relationship. So maybe you've had a very formal, I'm your mentor, you're my mentee type of conversation, or again, you've gone through this very formal process. And I want to make sure that I also note the different mentorship opportunities that are available through Junior Achievement. And I know that many of you are maybe aware of those. And of course, as we think about education and going back to, we will have school in the fall. What it looks like will be, it's still kind of up in the air, but there's different ways that there's some mentorship opportunities, whether it be career mentors or being able to volunteer in classrooms. So I wanted to make sure that I went back and mentioned that. So I think another part when we think about navigating the relationship between mentors and mentees, those initial interactions matter. So again, when we're thinking about those very formal ways, of how we meet students, and again, those informal ways. So maybe you've had a chance to participate in a career fair or just different ways to connect with students. Those initial interactions with them matter. So even if it is a very formal process and they've signed up for it, just really think about, well, how do you, I guess in some ways maybe cater to what the students need in some capacity, but just thinking about how you can make it as warm and friendly as possible. And so I think another part is when you navigate that relationship is thinking about likes and dislikes and how to find them out. And so as adults, we've done plenty of those true colors and different kind of personality tests and other tests that really kind of give us some insight into how we operate as employees. But really just kind of figuring out what your mentee likes and doesn't like. I think of some people classify themselves as huggers, and maybe your mentee is not a hugger. And so even when we think about those interactions that we have with other people, being able to say, hey, well, I'm a hugger, is that okay with you? And kind of being okay with even a student as young as, 5 saying, you know what, I don't like that, can we fist bump or different things like that. And so I think that's just another way that, respecting their boundaries, respecting their space. So not just, hey, I like chocolate ice cream, but really just thinking about respecting who they are as a person. I definitely get the mommy, I don't want kisses, but I'll kiss you type of thing from my 2-year-old. So just being able to, even at that age, respect what they like and don't like and respect their boundaries. Different ways to communicate. And I think this one is important as we think about working with high school students. And so just want to kind of zoom in on there. Obviously, communication is key. And I think the term now more than ever is probably overused, but I'm going to use it in this capacity. But especially as we as professionals, as adults, have had to navigate working from home spaces, really thinking about how we maybe have had to increase communication with our team to get projects and tasks done. And so that's even more important when we think about those relationships between mentor and mentee. How much is too much? What is just right? will it be, again, if you have those formal type of programs that you're participating in, I do believe with like Big Brothers Big Sisters, it's at least once a week that bigs and littles are getting together. Even with the mentoring program, the expectation is once a week. So that is, very much in line. But if it's something that maybe it's kind of an informal relationship that's been built, really figuring out, well, how much is too much? What is just right? Maybe based on the student and their schedule. If they're in high school, maybe that looks a little bit different than if they are a current college student or already in the workforce. And I have connecting via social media, and I really just think about my days as program director for 2020 leadership, and how I had a pretty standard rule that I wouldn't connect with students via social media until they graduated from high school. And I think just kind of back to that conversation about respecting boundaries and respecting space. I do think there's frankly things that we don't want to know about the students that we work with. And sometimes they could be overshares via social media. And maybe there's some things that you want to protect about your own space. And so being able to figure out, well, if I am serving in this mentor, trusted adult capacity for a student, is that really a lane that I want to connect with students on? Maybe LinkedIn could work when you think about if you're trying to help them with professional navigation, but maybe Instagram or Twitter or Facebook isn't necessarily the avenue, especially if they're 16 and there's some things that, within your social media space that you want to share or don't want to share. And finally, I think expectations for face-to-face meetings. Don't worry, we'll get to see each other again face-to-face. And I think about some things that even I had to set with my mom a few times before we would go out to dinner. She might be scrolling Facebook or be on the phone, not to say, hey, this is a technology-free dinner, And so just being able to respect your time, being able to say, hey, we're here together, we're talking about X, Y, Z. And so whatever those expectations that you might set. And again, feel free to, if you have teenagers that you are parenting, kind of what that looks like for you in your household. And so another important thing when we think about, how we navigate this relationship between mentors and mentees, I think we also have to be cognizant of the different generations that we're dealing with. And maybe there are more millennials that are serving as mentors to students who are in Gen Z, or maybe it's Gen X and Gen Z, but just wanted to kind of walk through some different ways that traditionally, obviously not one size fits all, but different ways that we've been accustomed to communicating kind of based on our age. So when we think about baby boomers who may be more used to phone calls, who may be used to letter writing and just used to this idea that careers just span over decades. Again, when I think about my mom who was able to work for one school district for 25 years, still a very hard thought for me to imagine, but that is just kind of the expectation that generally speaking that was available to people within that generation. Obviously, in the last few months here of 2020, we've seen that it just shifts so easily. And so when we think about how that translates to maybe a boomer mentoring or having that relationship with even a millennial or someone who's in Gen Z, there's probably some things to talk about and overcome just because that's maybe not their natural tendency to be on Zoom all day or be able to text or being able to sometimes read through expressions and emojis via text. And so again, when we think about, Gen X and how work-life balance may be being important and kind of the definition of latchkey kids. And so that may be different in a lot of ways from students who are in Gen Z, who digital natives, they literally just, everything's in an instant. So like Uber and Uber Eats and DoorDash, all of that is just kind of pretty natural for them. Nora, I see your comment about a lot of merging these communication types right now with different generations, for sure. And just another point, I didn't have a subtopic, but just considering intersectionality, and this is probably a whole another presentation, but just when we think about the different ways that I'll give a personal example. So when I think about identifying as Black, when I think about identifying as a woman, when I think about identifying as middle class, some of those things sometimes really stand in conflict just because there are situations where I feel like Blackness is probably more apparent than what it means to be a woman. And so when we think about the different ways that all of those things kind of come together and really shape who we are as a person, just really thinking about that as you consider yourself as a mentor or consider the mentees that you're working with. So again, sometimes race is kind of at the forefront, sometimes class is at the forefront, sometimes gender, or just whatever these other identities. And sometimes, frankly, they conflict with each other. But I think it's just, again, when we think about the ways in which people communicate those generational differences and traits, and also intersectionality, sometimes it could spark some different conversation and really just kind of shape how that mentor-mentee relationship plays out. And so, of course, maintaining the relationship, you know, when I think of the term mutually beneficial. So I studied public relations when I was a student at Drake, and one of my public relations professors really just kind of defined public relations as that, you know, mutually beneficial relationships. And for me, somehow that connected specifically when we think about mentor-mentee relationships, because again, sometimes it's really, sometimes a power dynamic at play that students may think that just because this person is, you know, in a trusted adult space that they're always right. And that's not always necessarily the case. And so again, when we think about what it means to mutually benefit two people in this mentor-mentee relationship, I think it goes both ways. I think, of course, as the adult, you don't expect gifts or anything like that from your mentee if they're, well, maybe not ever, but especially like if they're in high school or a college student that's working, or even just a younger person just kind of getting their career started. But just really just thinking about those different things, like, does this person respect your time? Do they respect, you know, the dates and times that you set up? Of course, life happens, and those are things that you get to shift and adjust to. But really just thinking about, is this something that you feel like adds to you as a person? Are you getting something out of this relationship? And it could be as simple as, look, I'm just trying to help and support this person. But, you know, if you find that the student or person that you're mentoring is taking it away, then that, I think, calls for a conversation and really just thinking about, well, what is this relationship? And again, are we all benefiting from that? Another question is just, you know, how will you grow with your mentee as they navigate high school, those post-secondary options and workforce? So again, this all kind of depends on the context in which this mentor-mentee relationship is built. But you are there in some ways as a person who maybe is able to give advice on your particular decision. Did you graduate from high school and go straight into a 4-year school and just kind of navigate life from there? I think especially now, there's a lot of conversations that students are having with their families about, is moving away to XYZ college worth it in a lot of ways, from cost, and will they get to have that experience that some of us were able to have, again, in its very traditional sense, and traditional will just continue to change. But just how will you grow with this person? When I think about, you know, relationships that people have via big brothers, big sisters, my brother is 33 now and met his big when he was about 10 years old. And so granted, they still don't have that same relationship, but it still has continued with him joining the military, having a family, his big brother having a family, but they still are able to kind of keep that connection. So it shifts over time, but, you know, kind of thinking about how you'll grow with this person. And so just again, some just additional thoughts about, you know, traveling together on this journey. And so I think about, you know, sometimes maybe mentorship is a very strong word when we think about what that means to say someone is your mentor, and even kind of how you get to that point to say, hey, you are my mentor. Again, if it hasn't been developed in a very formal context, but sometimes it's simply just being a friend and developing that friendship. And also have this bullet point about sponsorship. I just was reading the memo by Minda Harts, and it really is about specifically targeted to women of color, but just thinking about how just some different ways that people can make sure that they, in her terms, secure the seat, being able to have a voice at whatever, at said table. So being able to be in that decision-making role. And of course, I've heard the word sponsorship before, but it was top of mind by reading this book over the weekend. But when we think about how we want to use our position, our privilege in whatever capacity that is, to really be a voice, really be an ally for people. So if you're in a position to offer an internship or make that connection for your mentor, or excuse me, for your mentee, being able to also develop into this idea of sponsorship for people who are looking to you for support, advice. And again, sometimes it's as simple as friendship and having another trusted adult in their life. So the let's discuss didn't fully get there, but definitely open to your thoughts, questions, ideas, feedback. And again, when you think about these relationships that you have navigated, if you are thinking about establishing a mentor-mentee relationship, what are some of your thoughts there? I'm trying to find the chat box again.
Hi there, this is Nikki Music, and I was actually wondering, so my supervisor or my boss or whatever you want to call her, she is just a really influential person to me, and I want to establish like an official mentorship relationship with her. So how would you suggest establishing that and just like getting off on the right foot with that?
And there's no I don't want to say don't quote me on this, but definitely open to hearing maybe some of the other thoughts as well. But I think it's a simple ask, and maybe this person a little bit better than others, but deciding if it's, hey, this is a formal, will you be my mentor, and maybe kind of establishing some different things that you hope to get from them as your mentor. So I guess deciding if that's a face-to-face conversation, or again, kind of depending on when you want to do it, if it's, a video call. But I think just deciding if it's something that based on your relationship, it needs to be a sit down formal ask, or just a casual, I'm interested in these things from you. Would you be willing to serve as my mentor? And I think it's kind of simple. It sounds like it's a person that you feel like you can learn from and grow from. So definitely say go for it. I think just kind of figuring out what's the best avenue to make that particular ask, and kind of thinking about, well, when you're asking for that relationship, what are some things that you would need from them? Because maybe it's maybe there's a hesitancy on her part as the mentor of like, okay, well, what does that actually mean for you? Because again, everyone kind of has different ways in which they need to access their mentor. So I think, to sum it up, 2 bullet points of how you want to ask, and maybe 2 or 3 bullet points of, hey, these are the things that I'm asking of you as my mentor, and kind of being able to revisit those as time goes on.
Awesome. That is actually incredibly helpful. Thank you very much.
No problem.
And I saw your message, Kate, too. Thank you.
The KCPS mentoring program, I do believe the website is just KC, let me think, I could type it, kcpublicschools.org/mentoring. And I know that even there's been some adjustment with that, with virtual mentoring, but also was still the process of reaching out to parents. And I wasn't able to continue with the virtual component, but I think that this is just another example of adjusting and trying to continue recognizing the importance of mentors, especially when we think about some of our younger students, what kind of gains we see from them academically, socially, when they know that there's another trusted adult that they can depend on in that space. I heard we're gonna be called Zoomers. Have not heard of that. I think I've seen a lot of articles about Zoom fatigue, but that's again a whole separate conversation. I see Go Bulldogs. Do we have another Drake Bulldog in addition to Kate? Amanda went to Drake. Awesome. Oh, Wyandotte Bulldogs. Oh no, I see. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, we're supposed to have our Black alumni reunion this weekend, but of course that didn't happen. So any other thoughts? Thank you all for joining in today. I know in between probably all the other ways you're connected to your family and workspace. Appreciate you taking some time out.
Hey, Crystal, this is Mary Cooper. So I've got a question for you. Would you mind to just share with us your thoughts, maybe more poignantly, on what can really go wrong in a mentorship? I think it's important, of course, to look for how to be very successful, but I think also you learn over time, you know, in these mentorships, maybe pitfalls or things to avoid or personalities maybe to try to get through. I think it would be helpful to sort of talk through that. If you've got time, I would love it.
Yes, that's very real. So thank you for bringing that up. And just when I think of a particular situation, again, serving as a big sister, I used to live out in Arizona, and so had wanted to get connected and volunteer, and of course, knowing about Big Brothers Big Sisters, kind of went through that process. But what I found in that particular situation was that it came to be very taxing for me to find different opportunities to I'll say connect with my little sister, but I think it really kind of came down to this financial component. I know one time I remember taking her to get her nails done, and it ended up being a little more than what I expected. And then it kind of set this really weird expectation that every time we got together that there would be a buying of something or some sort of, you know, transaction. And so I really didn't feel comfortable continuing on with that. And so I think one of the pitfalls sometimes is that you find that, you know, the line between maybe mentor and family member gets a little bit blurred because you know, spent a lot of money. And I think, of course, there's mentors who are looking to spend a great amount of time with the young person. But, you know, for me, that was a boundary that I really couldn't get past. And then there was just, for me, kind of a comfort level in interactions with different people with our family. And so I feel like as much as I wanted to be in that volunteer role, but really just kind of protecting my space and simply just not feeling comfortable. But I think just some general pitfalls to be aware of are, you know, just thinking about, you know, do you feel safe? Do you feel comfortable? And I think maybe recognizing that in the student as well. So I think sometimes in those formal mentor-mentee relationships, you know, maybe sometimes the student hasn't signed up for it. Maybe their parents feel like they need a mentor, but they're not comfortable. And so kind of being able to recognize that. But I think the most important part is just really thinking about, well, where are you comfortable? Where could lines be blurred between, like I said, mentor and like, wait, am I taking, is this student only calling me when they need a ride to their friend's house or different things like that? And you just kind of maybe become in this position that you're really not comfortable with. So it's a very real thing. And I think, you know, even as great as mentor-mentee relationships can be, there are some times where maybe it simply just doesn't work out because of personality differences, conflicts, you know, and simply not feeling comfortable. So hopefully that kind of answers, and anybody else feel free to maybe shortly add in some ideas that you've had in those spaces.
Thanks, Crystal. Yeah, that was helpful. So I've mentored many times, but professionally, in my professional relationships, so I feel like this would be the first time that I'm sort of getting out of that. This is a professional mentorship or sponsorship. So I want to make sure that it's just a little different, I'm sure.
Yeah. I
So I
think so. I think so. And maybe because it sounds like it's kind of a workspace, like you said you were asking for a mentor that is a coworker, colleague.
Yes. So
Okay.
so for me, usually in my position, I will mentor younger, new, up and coming, project managers or folks that are trying to learn, the beginnings of their career. And I can provide a lot just from a career standpoint. But I think reaching out to a brand new mentee that, doesn't even know really necessarily what their career is going to be, or what their hopes and their dreams and what's next for them, and just being able to mentor in a way that's provides success for them, but doesn't get into that friendship role that's a little crosses the line, I think is what I want to make sure that I'm, educated as much as I can about those things.
Well, yeah. And I think that's, kind of to that point is that there is maybe that really weird line in the workplace of, colleagues versus friends, but we know like sometimes we do have to extend a little bit of ourselves to be able to navigate those waters a little bit better. But maybe it's, really kind of figuring out, well, how do you want to filter those kind of things? Are happy hours appropriate? Is it simply, not going to each other's houses, and that is, keeps the boundary to keep it, maybe more on the professional side. But again, sometimes we do have to break down some of those walls and share sometimes personal things in order to, to see some breakthroughs, but maybe kind of being able to do something as simple as, in your mind and say, we'll always meet in a public space, or, won't do anything after 8 o'clock, whatever those kind of things may be that really could cross the line into, friendship, before you wanted to get there. So I think that's a very real point.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I don't see any more questions. Like I said, thank you all for joining in. Look forward to any feedback. I'm sure there will be a survey or anything. So again, open to your thoughts, anything that maybe has been missed. Thank you, Cynthia. And so I'm going to kick it back over to Jenny.
All right. Yes. Thank you so much again, Crystal. This was all right. There we go. Now I'm sharing.
Okay.
So thank you again so much for presenting with us today. We were thrilled to have you with us and you sharing your mentorship wisdom. I myself am a mentor with the Kansas City Public School District. I have a lunch buddy in 3rd grade, I believe she is. So it is great to learn these tips and tricks, and I will definitely be keeping those in mind as I move forward with my mentor. So we want to take a second today as well to recognize our sponsors who make this virtual event and our in-person event possible. And with that, we want to also thank all of you for joining us today. Again, as mentioned, this program is designed to be with our high school students, to mentor them and to really show them all of the opportunities possible to them once they get out of high school. Access to education is the pivotal change agent to create opportunities for women, as you all realize. You have the chance to boost a student's confidence, and you have the chance to help them realize their full potential. So today I ask you to pay the gift of your mentorship forward by sponsoring a young woman to have this opportunity again in the fall. We run this event in both the spring and the fall, so we are hopeful that by the time October rolls around, we are able to have this event in person. So a gift of $53 will support a young female high school student in Kansas City with this experience. We'll provide her the tools to build her confidence and network so that 10 or 20 years from now, she will be sitting where you are today, creating opportunities for the next generation of young women. There are thousands of young women in Kansas City who could benefit from this experience and experiences like it. So you can sponsor a girl today for $53, and these opportunities will continue, but only with your help, and you make all of this possible. So you can sponsor a girl by visiting our website at greaterkansascity.ja.org/donate. You can give via our QGive link on the screen, our PayPal, or our Venmo account, which is JAGKC. And the last 4 digits that you would put in on Venmo are 7097. So again, thank you so much for your generosity and your time today. We loved sharing this experience with all of you. We hope that it was a great professional development opportunity for you and just a chance to connect and reach out to new people. So with that, unless we have any final questions or any final points that we would like to make, I am going to go ahead and end the call. But again, we thank you for your time today and hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you, everyone.